My name is Ural, and I have kept a lighthouse on the Oregon coast for 16 years. In that time, I have learned that the light isn't only for the living. Some nights, something out on the water sees it too and tries to come for it. This is about 3 times I found that out. Most people think this job doesn't even exist anymore. They figure all lighthouses went automated decades ago. Just a machine, a bulb and a computer flipping it on dusk. For most, that's true. But a handful up and down this coast still needs a person living on site, keeping the light because they are too remote or too temperamental to trust a machine. And I am one of these people. I took the job because I wanted to be alone. I won't raise that up. I'd come off about a few years, a marriage that ended, some drinking I'm not proud of, and living on a rock at the edge of the continent sounded like exactly what I needed, and it was. The job saved me. There is peace out here I have never found anywhere else. Most of the work is routine. You keep the light, you keep the logs, you watch the weather come from the Pacific, and the weather out here is a full-time job by itself. Storms that shake the whole tower, fog you can't see your own hand through. The ocean out here is not gentle, and it does not care about you. That's the first thing you must learn. But the ocean being dangerous is just nature. What I'm going to tell you about are 3 things that happened out here that weren't nature. 3 things I've never been able to explain. I want to be clear before I start. I'm not saying I know what any of this were. I've spent a lot of nights out here alone, and I know what isolation does to mind. It fills the dark with things that aren't there. Every one of these could have a plain explanation. Maybe they all do. The problem is that after 16 years, I still haven't found it. The first one happened during my 3rd winter. It started with a ship light where there was no ship, and it ended with something hanging outside my window, looking in. The first story happened in the winter of my 3rd year. By then, I was comfortable out here. I knew the rhythm of the place, the sound it made, the way light swept across the water. I wasn't nervous anymore. I stopped jumping at things. It was a bad night. A storm had came in of the Pacific around sunset. Heavy rain, wind strong enough to lean into, the kind of night where you stay inside and let the light do the work. I was up in the lantern room around midnight, checking the mechanism, when I looked out at the water and I saw a light. It was out past the rocks, maybe a half a mile offshore. A single light low to the water, the way a ship's light sits. And my first thought was some poor soul was out in the storm and he was in trouble, because no boat should have been out there on a night like that. The whole point of my light is to keep the ships off these rocks. And there was a vessel sitting right in the worst possible place, in the worst possible weather. I went for the radio. I called it out. This is the Coast Guard channel. Any vessel near the light, identify yourself. You are in dangerous water. But nothing, just static. I called again and nothing. I watched the light for a while and something started to bother me about it. It wasn't moving the way a boat moves in a storm. There were swells out there big enough to toss a small vessel around, waves I could see breaking white in the beam of my light. But that single light out there on the water just sat there, steady, level. It didn't rise and fall with the swells. It didn't pitch. It sat on the surface of a violent ocean like it was sitting on a table. I told myself it was a trick of the distance, the rain, the dark. I kept trying the radio, and then the light began to move toward me, toward the rocks, slowly, steadily, in a straight line against the wind, coming in like it was being pulled on a wire. And as it got closer, I could see there was no boat under it, just a light, a single glowing light about the size of a lantern, moving across the surface of the water toward the base of my tower. And there was nothing holding it up, or nothing behind it. I don't mind telling you I stopped calling on the radio. I just watched it come. It reached the rocks of the base of my lighthouse, the rocks that have turned the bottom out of real ships, and it didn't break, didn't stop, didn't do anything a light on a boat would do. It came up out of the water and started to rise, up to the side of my tower, toward the lantern room, toward me. I backed away from the glass, and when the light drew level with the lantern room, level with my own room, it stopped, and it hung there in the storm, right outside the glass, and I swear to you, it was looking at me. There was no face, no shape, nothing but the light, but it was aware of me. I have never been so sure of anything. I don't know how long we stayed like that, me pressed against the far wall of the lantern room, and that thing hanging out in the storm outside the glass. And then it simply went out, not moved away, but went out like a candle. And the storm was Just the storm again, dark and empty. The next morning, I called the mainland and asked carefully whether any vessels had been reported in distress near my station overnight, and none had. No boats out in the storm. Nobody has lost anyone. I checked the maritime logs later, the historical ones, the way you do when something gets under your skin. There were wrecks near my rocks going back over a century. Ships that have come in toward the light in a bad night and torn themselves open on these rocks. I try not to think about weather of this, but I guess the old light is still coming, still looking for the rest of its ship. Maybe it was a ball lightning, that's a real thing. Storms produce strange electrical phenomena which known as glowing orbs. I have read about it. Maybe that's all it was. But a ball lightning doesn't cross half a mile ocean against the wind in a straight line, and it doesn't stop outside your window and watch you. Or maybe it does, I don't know. I only know what I saw. The second story happened years later, and this one I have an even harder time explaining, because it didn't happen during a storm or in the dark. It happened on a clear, calm afternoon in a broad daylight. The lighthouse sits on a headland, and below it there is a small stretch of beach that you can only reach at a low tide. Down a path along the cliff, I'd go down there sometimes on calm days just to walk, to be at the water's edge instead of 100 feet above it. It was safe enough as long as you watched the tide and got back up before the water came in. One afternoon I was down on that beach and I saw a woman standing at the far side of it, near where the rocks came down to meet the water. Now, that was already strange, because there is no way onto that beach except the path from my station, and I'd have seen anyone come down to it. But I figured maybe someone had come around from the water side, a kayaker, or someone who climbed around the rocks at low tide. It happens, but rarely, so I didn't panic. I lifted my hand and waved, the way everyone's do. She didn't wave back. She was too far to make it out clearly. Just a woman in dark, old-fashioned clothing, standing very still, facing the water, with her back mostly to me. She wore a long skirt, the kind of things nobody wore in 100 years, but people wear all sorts of things, so I didn't mind it. I started walking toward her with the beach, partly to be neighborly, and partly to tell her she needed to head back before the tide turned. And here is the thing that I cannot explain. I walked toward her for what must have been several minutes, at a normal pace, across a beach that isn't that long, and I didn't get any closer to her. She stayed the same distance away the entire time, not moving and not walking away from me, just staying the same distance, the way something does in a dream, where you walk and walk and walk, but you never arrive. I stopped, and the moment I stopped, she turned her head and looked at me. Across that whole stretch beach, I felt her look at me. I couldn't see her face clearly, but I wanted to be honest. I couldn't make out features, but I could tell she was facing me now. I could tell, the way you can tell, that she wanted me to keep coming, that she was waiting for me to get close, to close that distance. I didn't keep going. Something in me, call it instinct, call it 16 years of learning what the ocean can do, told me not to take another step toward her. I turned around and I walked back to that path, and I climbed up the station and did not look back until I was at the top. When I finally did, the beach was empty, and the tide, which shouldn't have turned for another hour, had already came in and covered the whole stretch of sand where she'd been standing, coming fast, faster than I have ever seen it come in before or since. I looked into it later. I found out there had been a drowning of that beach a long time ago. A woman back in the 1800s who'd gone down at a light tide and been cut by the water when it came in faster than she expected. They never recovered her body. The ocean took her and kept her. Maybe I imagined the whole thing, a woman on a beach, a trick out of perspective, the distance harder to judge than I thought. Maybe she was a real person who climbed back around the rocks while my back was turned. But I have walked that beach 100 times, and I know how long it is. And I know you get closer to things when you walk toward it, except that once. And I know how fast that tide came in, like it was in a hurry to cover the place where she stood. I didn't go down to that beach anymore. The last story is the one that still keeps me up, and is the most recent. Only a few years ago, out of everything that happens out here, this one I have no explanation for at all, not even a bad one. I'd been having trouble with the foghorn. It's an automated system now, mostly, but it's old, and in heavy fog, it sometimes needs a manual reset from the equipment room at the base of the tower. This particular night, the fog had rolled in thick, thickest I'd seen in years, a wall of a gray you couldn't see 10 feet into. and the horn had cut out. So I went down to the equipment room around 2 in the morning to reset it. While I was down there, working on the horn, I heard knocking. It was coming from the door, the heavy outer door of the lighthouse, the one that faces the headline, the one you have to come down the path to reach. Someone was knocking on it, slowly, evenly spaced knocks. At 2 in the morning, in a fog so thick that nobody, and I mean nobody, could have ever found their way down that cliff path to my door. I stood there in the equipment room and did not move. The knocking came again, 3 slow knocks, and then a voice, muffled through the heavy door, called out. It was a man's voice, and it sounded tired. He said, "Please, I'm lost. I can see a light. Please let me in." Every decent instinct I have told me to open that door. There is a code out here, an old one. You do not turn away someone lost in the fog or the cold. The whole purpose of my light, of this entire station, is to help people who are lost out there in the dark. A man was at my door saying he could see my light and he needed help. But I did not open that door, and I will tell you why. Because I knew, the way you know things out here after 16 years, that there was no way for a living man to be standing on the other side of it, not that night, not in the fog, down the path without a sound of boat or a car or a voice until the knock. And because when he said, "I can see your light," something in me went cold. Because from the outside of that door, at the base of the tower, you cannot see the light. The light shines out to the sea, 100 feet up. A man standing at my door in the fog could not see it, but something that had come from the light, from out of the water, something that had been out there in the dark looking at it up, that thing could say it saw my light, and I mean it. So I stayed in the equipment room and I did not answer. I did not open the door. The knocking went on and the voice changed. Over the next while, it stopped sounding tiny lost. It started sounding like other things, other voices, voices I recognized, voices I hadn't heard in years. It called me by name. It used voices it had no way of knowing. I put my hands over my ears and I sat on the floor waiting for the sun.